Morning everybody, and welcome to our Wellness for All webinar, when today we'll be looking at transitions in education. When we think about our wellness charter and our view that wellness extends beyond the workplace, this is an important subject for our children and young people who may have returned this week or will be over the coming weeks, returning to schools, sixth form, colleges, university, or perhaps starting an apprenticeship. So what are we going to look at today? Well, today we're going to learn more about transitions and how fear and anxiety can be a natural part of that. We're going to explore how to encourage the development of a growth mindset and how we can become more resilient thinkers. Also, we're going to share some advice and practical tips and strategies to support our children and young people who are, as we say, returning to education. So I'm pleased today to welcome back Sandra Saint. I can't believe it's a year since we did a similar webinar. Sandra's a former teacher and she's a director with Golden Tree CIC, as you know, the company that Simon Richardson also works for. After leaving teaching, Sandra worked as a healthy school improvement advisor, and she's worked with children, young people, carers, parents, governors and teachers from a range of backgrounds, as well as being an advisor for a wellbeing awards in schools. And when she's not doing all that, she's a mum of 2 teenagers. Morning, Sandra, and thank you for joining us again. It's great to have an expert around young children and young people with us to help us on this subject today.
Thank you. Good morning, Tracy, and good morning, everyone. Not quite sure that I'm an expert in things, but I certainly have got lots of experience, should we say. So to make a start this morning, everybody, starting off with what is transition. And when we think of transition, we first and foremost usually think of that major transition within education from primary to secondary school. But actually, I think it's very worth, and the work I've done around transition, it's very much worth about thinking broader than that. Because transition, for the word transition, you can read the word change. As it says there from the Oxford English Dictionary, the actual definition being it's a period of changing from one thing to another. So it's about starting school, it's about moving from primary to secondary, it's about moving from secondary on to college, college onto university and higher education, or learning within work in terms of apprenticeships. But it's also the changes within the same school, but to a different class teacher or to a different year group. They all bring with them their own changes and their own challenges. And the image I chose on there, I chose intentionally because it illustrates quite nicely that change is about adapting, but the fundamentals and the foundations of what makes us us are still there as well. They remain behind. So a period of change does provoke the anxiety response, and that's quite normal and quite necessary for us. That anxiety kind of is a natural response that keeps us safe. It's a necessary response, but it can branch out in different ways. It can be taking the form of excitement, feelings of excitement. It can be feelings of nervousness. And also, because it's quite scary, it can evoke feelings of fear. And quite often that fear is displayed as anger. And that's just because if somebody is displaying anger, quite often that's masking a fear because something is changing. And all of those emotions are all absolutely valid, but therefore an effective way forward is to recognise those emotions and accept them. And so this next slide actually has been seen previously in a webinar that my colleague Simon did, but I thought it was really worth having this kind of reminder that it is about a fear of the unknown. It's about that uncertainty provoking that anxiety, and it's about being brave and courageous. And when I'm speaking, I just want to say, when I'm talking in this webinar today and I'm saying the word you, kind of read for that word you and being interchangeable with them, and talking about children and talking about young children, because it's worth remembering it's also changes happening for you as they're going through changes as well. So this kind of works both ways. So broaden out my use of the word you. But yeah, the process of recognizing anxiety provoking situations, we learn best just outside of our comfort zone. So the process is, it kind of starts with a bit of confusion, and then it gets that emotional response, that excitement, nervousness, fear. And what's really important is to try and really focus on keeping positive with all of this, embracing these feelings in a positive way, and having patience that these feelings are there, that they are valid, and that it's a process to work through. Because if we accept that, then that's how we can move on and flourish and achieve new things, learn new things, achieve new goals. Because very much it is about stepping outside your comfort zone, feeling that anxiety, that saying, feel the fear and face it anyway. There's a lot to be said for some of these kind of sayings that are there within time and history. I also think it's quite useful to have a little bit of knowledge, and it really is just to scratch the surface knowledge around what's going on inside our brain, because there's a massive link between what goes on in our brain and what goes then on within our body and the physical responses of anxiety. The first thing I want to mention is the teenage brain. So it is kind of that large transition between primary and secondary, and through those teenage years, those formative teenage years. The process of maturation of the brain takes place during adolescence, so from primary school through the secondary school years, which is basically where the brain is kind of being reformed. All the childhood things, the brain's going through a process of sorting itself out and keeping the things that were useful in childhood and that will be helpful as that person moves into adulthood, and kind of making space for new things. So that brain development and brain changes lasts over quite a period of years. But with that comes various things that cause what we like to that teenage behavior that we refer to, because they're more susceptible to anxiety and stress, and that's because of a higher level of cortisol that's being produced. They're more susceptible to a low mood because serotonin levels are fluctuating and being reduced as the brain's being reformed. And the dopamine within the brain, the levels of dopamine shoot up, and that makes them more susceptible to risky behaviours because of the reward seeking that goes along with needing that hit of dopamine. So that kind of explains a little bit, to scratch the surface. It's not a neuroscience lesson about what's going on within the teenage brain through that, while they're also going through that period of change and transition. The other thing is some of those feel-good hormones that are particularly useful for us in terms of maintaining that positivity. And basically, serotonin, all of these things are kind of relevant further through the webinar and some of the other slides I'm going to talk to. Serotonin is about, it's a boost we get that makes us feel good when we have social connections. Oxytocin is often referred to as the hugging hormone. You need trust for that, but actually we get an extra boost of oxytocin through touch. That's why it's called the hugging hormone. Dopamine is kind of the reward. It's within the pleasure center, and kind of switches energy levels on and off. And the endorphins are a bit of a distractor. They're linked to the pain. If we've got pain, fear, anger, and we're getting a hit of endorphins, they're triggered by laughing, which is something worth remembering as well. It's kind of also worth mentioning here, because it is relevant, the whole process of neuroplasticity, which is where the brain is making new connections, and in relation to emotional responses, these new connections are strengthened by repetition. That's how we strengthen these things. And again, that's kind of important and relevant when we look at some of the practical strategies later on in the webinar. And practicing these things makes our brains easier to access them, because we are strengthening those connections, those new synapses all of the time. So basically, the next slide is just a message from me that it's up to you to decide to take that chance, to step outside your comfort zone and to make the change. And I just thought that slide illustrated it really beautifully. One of the strategies we can use, and is used in many schools now, many schools do work around getting their children and young people, and indeed their staff, to develop a growth mindset and become a resilient thinker. And basically, what that is the way, it's based on the CBT type interventions, so the cognitive behavioural therapies, cognitive behavioural tools and techniques, which is where our thoughts affect our feelings, and in turn they affect our behaviours. So what we're thinking will have an absolute effect on how we're feeling, and that will then affect our actions and our behaviour. In terms of CBT being used when the actual feeling of anxiety is there, when it's present, it's a 3 R's model, if you like. It's about recognising the feeling and naming that emotion, releasing that feeling because it's actually exhibited in the body, not in the mind. So recognise the feeling, and actually it may be, I'm sweaty, I've got a dry mouth, I'm clenching my fists, or I'm pulling my shoulders up because I'm really anxious, I'm fidgety, I'm shaking my leg, I'm biting my nails, I'm tapping my hands. So all of these feelings are exhibited within the body, not in the mind. So it's about releasing that feeling and then refocusing. So what do I need to do now? What do I need to do right now? Refocus in the moment, because that anxiety does affect our thinking. And that moves on to being a resilient thinker. We are, by human nature, again, based in early brain development, negative by default. That is kind of our default position. We're hardwired to go for the negative first, because it's about that kind of flight, fight and freeze response, keeping ourselves safe. It's a natural thing. But it's about realising that, knowing that is helpful, and challenging those negative thoughts. So, and it goes along with the growth mindset. So the thought being, I can't do this, just simply adding the word yet to that. I can't do this yet. And that becomes then, how do I learn to do this? So it just presses the pause button on those negative thoughts. And a really useful technique for becoming a resilient thinker is using traffic lights. So when you've got that negative thought See that, recognize that negative thought and see that as the red light and stop. Then that red light changes to amber, and that's you pressing the pause button and being able to use amber as, right, I need to challenge that red thought. And then I'm going to, as it turns green, I'm going to reframe that thought into a positive one. I'm just going to flip the way I'm thinking about it, flip it into the positive, and then it's green for go. It sounds simple, and believe me, it isn't. But with persistence, with determination, and with keeping going with, okay, I didn't do it that time, but next time I'm going to be better at recognizing that red thought, that negative thought. Practice makes it more efficient, makes it easier to access and more effective, because again, thinking about those synapses. So we're changing that negative by default into a positive, resilient way of thinking by default instead. What I'm going to try and do, rather than I have given you a kind of scratch the surface theory on all of this, but try and share with you now and get you to do now, experience some practical techniques and some effective strategies that through my experience, I know work. The first thing I want to mention is sleep. Sleep is so very, very important. And again, as a parent, kind of, you know, they think they're invincible. At whatever age they think they don't need the sleep. They can run on what seems like running on empty or a never-ending Duracell battery when they're young. And then their sleep patterns go all out the window as they kind of grow older and get towards the teenage years. And again, it's to do with physical and biological changes. But sleep is really, really important. Effective sleep, sometimes referred to as sleep hygiene. And that links in with routine. Routine is also really, really important. We kind of thrive on routine, we flourish on routine. So trying to get that set bedtime routine of the time, but also the switching off devices at least an hour before settling down, thinking about the comfort, thinking about the room temperature, thinking about light and noise distractions. All of these are really important, so that we get really effective sleep. The next thing I want to think about is just relaxing. And I wanted to do a little bit of an experiential bit of learning here. And this can link to being able to relax and chill out and calm the body and mind to help induce that effective sleep, if you like. So relaxation techniques at bedtime are really effective. So I'm going to invite you now to just, while I read through this kind of script, if you like, we are going to be doing some relaxation using the melting chocolate method. We all like chocolate, whatever age we are. So this method, the script I've got is referring to bedtime, but it can be used at any time as well. But particularly useful when you're in bed, laying down and ready to go to sleep. So if you're in your chair, just get comfy at the moment. Just sit nice and straight in your chair and relax. Feel the chair underneath you, and your feet on the floor. And just listen to me as I say this. So imagine you've got a coating all around you of hard chocolate. Just a bit, I suppose, a bit like a minstrel. And you need that chocolate to melt so that you can relax into a comfy position. And to do this, what you need to do is you need to tense all of the muscles in your body, tense them up to be able to then relax them and help break away that hard coat and help the chocolate melt away. So let's start with the top of our bodies and work all the way down to our feet. So first, Close your eyes when you're comfy. You're in a nice safe space, so just close your eyes. And raise your eyebrows 3 times as high as you can. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Feeling the chocolate softening across your forehead as you're cracking that coating off, and behind your head as well, to the places that have been moved. Now concentrate on your face and screw your face up as tight as you can 2 or 3 times so that you're breaking that brittle outer coating away and you're feeling the chocolate flake off. And as it's flaking off, it's taking any tension away with it. So now concentrate on your mouth and pull the biggest smile you can 2 or 3 times again. 1, 2, really stretch your mouth, and we're going to come back to the power of smiling a bit later. The chocolate is now gone from your forehead, it's melting away, it's breaking away from your cheeks and your chin, and you can feel your head relaxing. And if you're in bed, sinking into your pillow. Moving down to your shoulders, pull them up towards your ears as high as you can for the count of 3. And when you relax, feel the warm, soft chocolate melting away as it's breaking off your shoulders and falling onto the floor around you or the bed beneath you. And it feels all warm and cozy. Moving down your arms, press your whole arm either into the bed or tense it up, clench your fists, tense yourself up, and then when you relax your arm and your fingers, you're breaking off the hard coating and you're feeling the gooey chocolate melting away from your arms, taking any tension away with it. Moving down to your legs, do the same thing. Scrunch up your toes, tense up the muscles in your calves, through your knee and your thigh. Take that right up into your torso and tense everything up. And then slowly release that tension down your torso, into your legs, feeling that chocolate break off and then start to melt away all the way down right through to your ankles and into your toes. Stretch your toes out, break the last little bits of hard coating away and feel the chocolate running away between your warm toes, away under your body, into the floor or into the bed, and feel all the weight of your body sinking and relaxing, feeling cozy, comfortable and relaxed as you drift off then into a wonderful sleep if you're doing that at bedtime. Thank you for doing that, and hopefully you are feeling more relaxed. Just a very simple, useful technique with any age really, but you can change the chocolate for whatever you want. It's the actual process of tensing and relaxing muscles and parts of the body, and that message of thinking, when I release this tension, when I release this kind of really stretching everything out, it's taking that tension away with it as well. And within that was also mentioned smiling, and using smiling as a technique to stretch your face muscles. And smiling is actually really good for you. The process of smiling and the shape that your mouth and your face makes when you smile stimulates some changes in the brain. It stimulates the release of those natural feel-good hormones, the serotonin, the dopamine, things like that. So we're not gonna do this one now, but this is the one I'm gonna challenge you to do at some point today, tonight, and then try and build in to everyday life at the moment where you look in the mirror. morning or evening, or at some point through the day. And the way you can get your youngsters, your children and young people to do this with you, because they're then getting the benefit, is if you need to, say to them, I've been learning something at work today, and they've asked us to give this a go, but you know what, I really need you to help me with that. Putting the word need in there rather than I want you to help me with that makes a difference as well. Subtle changes of language can make a big difference. So I need you to help me practice this, and get them to do it with you. Look in the mirror, make eye contact with yourself, and this only needs to take 15 seconds, less, more, whatever feels comfortable for you. Try and build it up. Make eye contact with yourself and give yourself a smile, and think positive thoughts about yourself. Doesn't need to be for long, but what you need to do is to repeat that regularly, daily if you can. We all look in the mirror to clean our teeth, to put our makeup on, to have a shave, to get washed, to do whatever we're doing. For the first split second of that, make eye contact with yourself and give yourself a smile. All this is releasing those positive feel-good things that help with when you need to link into the positive thoughts, you're more able to access them because of those chemicals that are already going round in your brain and your body. The next technique that I want us to think about is our breathing. And there are a few different examples on here that you can use depending on the age, depending on the person, of breathing techniques. The one I'd like us to have a go at now is taking 5, as kind of I use it and is used in schools. Breathing and grounding ourselves using breathing is used lots and lots in schools, right through from nursery, right through into the further and higher learning establishments as well. So it's something, again, very quick, very simple, that we can all build into our everyday lives. And so taking 5, we've all got our hand always with us. And that's the reminder of, hang on a minute, I'm starting to feel a bit anxious, or I can feel those negative thoughts. I just need to take 5. And that can be kind of just, you know, when you go visit the bathroom, just a bit of privacy, take 5, and just use your hand and trace it as it shows in the picture there. So let's have a go together now. Breathing in through your nose as you go up to the end of the digit, and then out through your mouth as you sweep around the curve. So let's do that together now. On the last one, it's often worth keeping breathing out, because when we're anxious, we breathe more shallowly. We don't use our full lung capacity, and that allows stale air to remain in our lungs. So when we breathe out, normally, we can actually breathe out a lot more. So use the fact that that's a long one to breathe out, but then to keep breathing out and really empty your lungs, because then automatically you will then take a really deep breath in, and that's reoxygenating the whole of the lung system, and that oxygen again flooding up to the brain and around the body is really useful for getting the brain to work effectively. It's important, really important, to practice these techniques when you are feeling calm, because then when you are feeling anxious, they will be much more effective and easier to access. So practice them when you can. So build it into some point in your day when you can practice that. So then you can kind of get the youngsters, the children and the young people and yourselves to realise that when that anxiety is hitting, because there's something new around the corner, I'm starting a new lesson for the first time, I'm meeting a new person for the first time, I'm going into a new room or space that I've not been to before. I've got to find my way from here to here, I don't know where I'm going. So when the anxiety hits, they can just, whether the hand's in their pocket or what, they can just kind of go, I'm just going to take 5. And sometimes it might be that they only need to take 3, and that's fine. That's absolutely really good. What else I'm going to do on this is, for the very youngest of children, I've got a really simple short story which kind of goes through the breathing technique again, which is really useful for the youngest of children because it's kind of written as a storybook. So I'm going to send that on to Tracy afterwards so that she can share that with you, or you can ask for that. And it's about teaching the breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, using smelling a strawberry, blowing out a candle. Okay. What I'm going to do now is another kind of grounding technique, is invite you to listen to a piece of music. We're not going to listen to the whole of this piece of music. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it before I play it, because then I just need to alter some technologies and you won't be able to hear me speak. I will listen to a short snippet of it and then bear with me while I sort the technologies out to come back to you. But basically, there's a piece of music called Weightless, and it's about 10 minutes long, and there are slightly shorter and slightly longer versions of it, and you can find it on YouTube. And again, I've already shared with Tracy the direct link for this, which will be shared with you later. And it's called Weightless because it's actually the most relaxing piece of music that has been created. And this is research based. It was researched by an organisation called Mind Lab, and it was constructed specifically in collaboration with sound therapists. And what they found was there was people, after having listened to this, there was a 65% reduction in overall rates of anxiety. So please bear with me while I just move the technologies so that you can listen to this piece of music. Hopefully you can hear me again and you're back with me. That was only a short 1-minute clip taken from quite early on. The quality is not brilliant coming through my microphone and speakers in terms of a webinar. So please do check that out. And as you can see, there's actually video images to go along with it, or you can close your eyes and listen. And in terms of the video clips, there are a couple of different versions of that. But music, whether it be that piece of music or any other kind of relaxing music is really useful, because sometimes, and I know myself from, you know, my teenage son, some of his music, I think, really? That can't possibly be relaxing. But while he's listening to that music, he's not thinking about anything else. So if he's listening to that music while he's in the shower, it's giving him that time to just let his mind settle. So whatever the choice of music, really, music is a good thing. So kind of go with it, get them to use headphones if you don't want to listen to it as well. And this slide here, a few things. Grounding, I've kind of mentioned there in terms of music, but basically grounding techniques are linked with any kind of mindfulness. And again, mindfulness in schools and right through from the youngest of children in nurseries, right through the years and the ages through to the further and higher education. Mindfulness is gaining traction and being practiced on a regular, weekly or even daily basis, whereby it's about using their senses. And many schools are doing this now. So that one in the middle there is, again, a really useful little prompt card about just calming your thoughts and calming yourself down. But grounding really is about kind of using your senses. So if you just, again, you're in your comfortable position, just close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, in through your nose and out through your mouth. But notice your body position. It's just about noticing things and feeling things. What can you hear? And just being curious. Being present with your breath, noticing your breath. Can you hear your breath? Can you feel your breath? If you do this outside on a cold day, you can see your breath. You could do mindful eating in terms of what you can taste. Also the sense of what you can touch, holding a stone in your hand or an object in your hand. What does it feel like? So anything that gets you to just be calm, use your senses and ground yourself. The important bit is that you're doing it intentionally. It's a bit of self-care with intent. And it is the practice of what's called equanimity. And it's practicing that with the confidence and the intention so that you know you have got the power and the ability within yourself to overcome those feelings of anxiety. Other bullet points on there, again, just a few quick practical strategies. Laughter, having fun, and laughter has got real power. The physical act of laughing is good for you. As with smiling, it stimulates the production of the body's natural feel-good hormones. So if you can make sure we are laughing regularly, you've got that constant hit of dopamine, serotonin, all of those other things going round in your system, allowing you to access that positivity much easier. The same with moving. It says exercise there, but any kind of physical activity where you're actually moving. Being able to talk and connect to people, sharing thoughts, sharing feelings, or just sharing chit chat, but connecting with people. And connecting with people links to the bottom one as well, the power of the hug, the oxytocin, the hugging hormone, if you like. If we all now, I know I can't see you, we can't see each other, but if you hold your hands out now and do a virtual hug to the screen, and we think that everybody's doing that, we get that feeling of connectedness and togetherness. So even without, in these bizarre times of a more virtual world, we can still connect with people. So physical activity and connection are part of the 5 ways to well-being that I know there have been other wellness webinars on as well. And the other thing that's on there, rosemary. You might think that's a bit bizarre, but it's something I've been kind of reading more and more about. It's not new, but there's more and more research at the moment going into this. And rosemary and smelling rosemary is, like I say, being researched now. Improves memory, increases alertness, but actually it decreases stress levels, because it reduces, smelling rosemary inhibits the release of cortisol, and that is linked to stress. Too much cortisol can make us feel more stressed. So if we can reduce those cortisol levels to a healthy, we need cortisol to a healthy amount, then that's all good for us. So rosemary being on there, although it seems bizarre, actually smelling rosemary on a regular basis, and it's dead easy to kind of, you know, grow really easy to do, or purchase as a essential oil. But I'm busy making my own at the moment from growing it. That's easy to do. But actually, it's again got more and more research behind the powers of doing that. Okay, so really, there's other support things out there as well. There's lots of self-help books, and there's a really good series of books called Worry Busters that I would recommend. Again, quick Google search and you'll find those. There are specific support websites out there for young people, Young Minds particularly. Papyrus is another one. Young Minds have a text service as well. So the way youngsters communicate at the moment is very much, rather than picking up the phone and having a conversation, they'll do it through text. So these support services have started to use that method of communication. And many schools also now are starting to use various apps and things and have this whole wellness and mental health side of things going on in their school as part of their curriculum. So by doing these things at home and encouraging these things at home, you're also reinforcing the things that are going on at school. And ask them what's going on at school, because mental health is now part of the compulsory education and curriculum. So ask them what's going on within their learning at school around this. The image on there, again, that goes with that whole growth mindset and taking things step by step, breaking them down. How do you eat an elephant? You cut it up into small pieces. Break things down step by step and try and keep that positive mindset, that positive outlook, and that will help develop that perseverance, that grit, and that determination that all schools are trying to foster in their young people, as it's more and more about them as children and young people, not just about the learning and the academic side of things. So I'm going to kind of leave you with this slide, because it's also research that actually the most pressure, particularly through transition times, that is put on children and young people is by themselves. They put that pressure onto themselves, and we all do that, but particularly in relation to transition and that kind of negative outlook. That pressure with school is very much them putting pressure on themselves, not from the external sources, even though they might say that it is from themselves. So it's about just being kind to yourself. Self-care and self-compassion in adults, in children, in young people, in whatever age we are, is essential, not selfish. And I think it's really important that we remember this. We need to look after ourselves. The link between our mental health and our physical health is inextricable. So if you're not looking after your mental health and your general emotional well-being, it will have physical manifestations. Okay, I've thrown an awful lot at you there. I'm open to any questions or comments or anything on that. Back to you, Tracy.
Oh, thanks, Sandra. If anyone has any questions, do pop them in the box and I can ask Sandra. They look like interesting resources, the Worry Busters book. I'll definitely be having a look at that, Sandra, and the Young Minds website as well.
Yeah. There's lots of specific support things out there, but I find the most effective thing is to try and use the self-help strategies so that we're kind of negating the need for, not always, but negating the need for the best part of the time, for the majority of the time, for the specific support. But that specific support is there and absolutely is crucial if it's needed.
I mean, I think, you know, for me, I remember my sort of daughter starting school. I might have mentioned this last year on the webinar. She'd been to nursery full time, but school was just a massive change for her. And she really did struggle for the first 6 weeks. You know, she broke her heart every day. She woke in the night upset and distressed. You know, I honestly thought, I just don't know how, you know, I can carry on with this situation. Even myself was finding it, you know, very hard, worrying how she was getting on at school and, you know, you're in the work day and things like that. And, you know, schools do try to transition them into, don't they, the first days of school. But actually for my daughter, doing half days for 6 weeks, which is what occurred at the time, actually didn't work for her. You know, she was in between two worlds. You know, she was in a new school in the morning and then back in her nursery in the afternoon. And I'm sure there's lots of parents this week, you know, who are having to struggle with that issue. And how as a parent do you know, not get stressed and anxious about it yourself, which then, you know, makes the child feel even more anxious. You're looking at mum going, well, you know, mum's looking a bit upset here at school as well. And that's, you know, creating this vicious circle, really. So is there anything that we can do as parents, really, to just try and not show our, you know, anxiety or our stress at the situation?
It's exactly that, what you're saying, Tracy. It is really, really not an easy thing to do. But it's about, if you are feeling that, try and not display that, because that will absolutely get that cycle perpetuating. They pick that up from you. So it's about trying really hard that if you've got your wobbles as a parent, you kind of have those wobbles when that child isn't around. It is really, really difficult. But I do have to say that schools are getting much, much better at managing transitions. And transition now isn't just kind of you go for a couple of day visit or a home visit before you start school as a one-off. They've realised now it's a much lengthier process, and actually sometimes it's making the process lengthier. It's really bizarre in terms of the time we think about it as a transition time, but actually doing it quite all in one go. So rather than those half days you mentioned there, it's like, right, it's going to happen and it's going to happen now. But we're going to be aware that this is going to be tricky for quite a while. And we're going to do things as much as we can to make it as easy as we can in terms of embracing that change. But yeah, they all do it differently, and one size doesn't fit all, because every individual is different.
And that's helpful, because you just answered a question that has come in about, you know, what support can schools offer, and it sounds like, you know, things have changed somewhat in the sort of 15 years from my most recent experience. And it
Absolutely.
is really challenging because you don't want your child to upset the children in and around them as well. And it's finding the right balance as to when you're stepping away and, you know, making them have to cope with the situation, and, you know, when you shouldn't. And that's a really hard judgment call, I think.
It is, and just to use an example of that kind of major transition that we think primary to secondary, I did a piece of work for a local authority across all of their schools in terms of what's the best, most effective way to do transition, what's the best practice. So it doesn't matter which school your child's coming from and which school your child's going to, we've all got the same best practice going on. And actually transition starts, the best transition starts in year 5 rather than even leaving it in year 6. But if it starts in year 6, it starts early in year 6 and it's drip fed. It doesn't stop when they walk through the doors of secondary school. It goes on right through year 7 and even into year 8 as well. So it bridges more, rather than a distinct change, it's kind of a smoother transition. And even, I've got to say, in the difficulties of COVID for last year's school year and still there to some extent for this year's school year, those transitions where they go visit haven't been possible, and schools have been really good at flipping it and using the virtual world to do, having pupils doing virtual tours and teachers saying, putting out to new nursery starters, this is your nursery environment, and having mock-up things being videoed and sent home. So that transition is taken very seriously now because of the impact it has.
And I think that's reflected at university stage as
Absolutely.
well now, where you know, they try to encourage people who are on the same courses to connect on social media, you know, before they even start, which I think is really positive, because I think, you know, we sometimes, you know, underestimate the impact of that transition on young people, when actually when they're away at university, they're not coming home from school or college back into their safe, you know, home environment without support from their parents and guardians and carers. And you know, so that's a challenging transition as well, isn't it?
Absolutely is, yeah.
Okay, well, that's it. We haven't got any other questions today, but thanks for that, Sandra. I think it's a good one to be recorded, because we can use those techniques again and again and get better at doing those. So thank you for that. What have we got next week? Well, next week we're going to be focusing on World Suicide Prevention Day, and Simon's going to come along and look at this really sensitive subject through the eyes of someone who's lived through the experience of an attempted suicide. Clearly, you know, this is a subject that's extremely sensitive, and this could impact people, you know, who've had these sort of challenges themselves, or had their family or friends experiences challenges in this area in the past. So if you are affected by it, or you do need some support, and there's lots of support out there for you, including the Samaritans and our We Care support, our employee assistance program. So that's what we will be looking at next week. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, Sandra.
Okay, thank you.